Hi guys, welcome to Pixel Affair. It's Kobe here, and in today's video we are going to recreate this particular effect, right? So this is a link that was sent to my Instagram inbox by Visual 3D, and it was asking how I could recreate effect like this, and it's by Thomas Bedden, right? And he sent me other links as well, so if I go in there, right, but they all use similar approach or technique, so doing the first one will be okay. But I also got another request asking me how I'll actually inflate and deflate text in Cinema 4D 2023, and I think they are all basic and simple. So let's get into Cinema 4D 2023 and see how we will create these effects. So I'm going to start with the inflating and deflating of text in Cinema 4D. And since Cinema 4D R26 and 2023, this is very, very simple and straight to the point. So let's go ahead and create our text. So I'll create my text. I'll actually prefer to use text spline, but you can also use the text object as well. So I'll type in P, right? And that's the text you are going to inflate. It could be any long text, but I'm going to use P. I'll middle align it and I'll change it to bold, from regular to bold, right? Then I'll now create my extrude, make the spline a child of the extrude, and now you can see we have our text spline extrude, but it's too thick, so I'll reduce it to like something like 30, which I think is fine. So from here going, first of all, I'll come to my display and change the shading to garage shading with lines so that we see the lines and the segments. And you can see it doesn't have enough segments, right? So for it to be like act like love, you have to give it enough segments. So you can simply come in, select the extrude, come to caps, and down there you can see we have cap types, caps type. We change it to regular grid, and now we can choose quad dominant so that it will be more of quads, right? The next is I'll come back to the text object and I'll change actually the spline. I'll select the spline and I'll change the intermediate point to something like natural, right? And it gives us, some nice intermediate points in here, right? And now in the text, I'll select the extrude again and the subdivision so that you can see in the middle here there's no subdivision, so I can add a couple of it, right? And now we have enough subdivision there, and this basically a text. So from here going, it's as simple as just right clicking our extrude, coming to our simulation tags, and I'll add cloth, right? So if I hit play, you can see our P is falling, so now it's cloth and it's dynamic, but there's gravity in the scene, that's why it's falling. So if I type Control D, and you can see it brings us to our project settings, or we can simply come into edit project settings and it will bring us to the same place. So in the project settings, we will select the simulation tab, and I'll come to the scene. Down here you can see we have scene and simulate. If I select the scene and set the gravity to 0, now if I hit play, you can see nothing happens, even though our text is a cloth object. So now I'll select the cloth tag, and all I have to do is in the bar, you can see we have tabs, balloon and everything. So I can choose the balloon, and now I'll enable it, right? If I it's 1, so there's no pressure, everything will stay as default. But if I increase it to like 2 and now hit play, you can see it's sort of inflating, and it inflates over 30 frames, right? So we start inflating gradually until frame 30. That's when it will reach its full potential. So inflating text is quite easy, right? And at the same time, if you want to deflate it, all you have to do is to set it to like say 0.2 and hit play, and you can see it's deflating it as well. Let me change the display to garage shading. You can see it's now deflating our text as well. So doing this in Cinema 4D is quite simple. So let's go ahead and create some inflation that looks a little bit interesting, right? So I'll select the text, and I have the same text with the text line and everything. So I'll select the text, the offset, and I'll reduce it to like probably 1, right? And one thing I'll do is that even though if I change the display back to garage shading with lines, right, even though we have the segment, this one actually works fine, it can work perfectly, but I prefer to use the remesher because the remesher give us some uniform grid. So I'll create a remesh, and now I'll make the chart of the remesh, and the remesh only exists, I think, from Cinema 4D S26 and upwards. So I'll create the remesh, I'll make an extrude chart of the remesh, and in the remesh I'll change the polygon count to, I'll change from mesh density to polygon count, and probably increase it to 4,000 because it's fast, right? So we have enough polygons, and you can see it's quite uniform than the default one in the extrude object. So in Cinema 4D, now let's actually go ahead and right click and add our simulation tag, cloth tag, and in the balloon you go ahead and enable it and increase it. You know, because we've made the thickness 2 thing, we have to increase the pressure so that we feel it. So I'll increase it to like probably 10, and now if I hit play, you can see it's, you know, inflating it like with it. And in the control, if I hit Control D and bring the simulation, you can see the gravity, everything is 0, so there's no gravity. So let's go back to the tag, and now what I want to do is that it's moving the whole text, right? But I want the edges of the text to stay, then the inner part rather inflate, right? And what we can do is that I can simply right click on the remesh, come to other tags, and I'll add vertex map. And since in Cinema 4D 2023, you can actually go ahead and add vertex map to parametric objects initially, unless you make the object editable before you can do it. But if you are in 2023, you can add it to parametric objects like this. So I've added it to the remesher, but you can see it's not actually showing in the scene, right? So what I can do is that I'll select the remesher, and if I actually go to the poly count and increase it, let's say by 1, you can see it refreshes, and now it comes back. I can bring it back to the 4,000. It's not necessary. You sort of need to do that to refresh it. I don't know if it's a bug or something, but it works this way. With the vertex mark created, like I said, I want only the inner parts and the edges to stay the way it is, right? So we are going to use the spline to control that. So in the vertex map, I'll open my my extrude, and I'll drag and drop the spline inside the vertex map, right? And can see something is happening. So I'll select the spline inside the vertex map. I'll change the actually come to the layer tab, and I'll change the distance mode to from along to radius, and you can see just the edges of our text is what has been selected, right? So the edges are yellow and the inner part is red, but I want the inner part rather to be red and the edges to be yellow. So I'll come to remap and I'll invert it. So I'll choose invert, and I can see the inner part is yellow and the outside is red, right? So let's go back to the layer, and now we can increase or reduce the radius of our spline here. So I'll actually set it to like something like 5, and now let's go back into our tag here. You can see if we hit play, everything stays default, right? Nothing has changed. But in the cloth tag, there is mix animation. In the mix animation, you can choose with pins. So what the pins does is that it forces our object to stay, or all points to stay where it is without it moving, right? So if I hit play, you can see it's not moving, right? But we can use the vertex map to tell it where it should stay and where it should move. So if we drag in our vertex map, what's happening is that it's telling all the yellow parts to have the cloth effect and the red part to stay, right? So now if I hit play, you can see it's only inflating the middle part, and now our outside part is actually staying. And this one gives it a little bit of some interesting kind of look, right? If you want it to just, you can actually select our vertex map, select the spline, and actually even reduce it to like say 1. And if we hit play, right? You can see we have our text inflated, but the edges are staying the same. Or you can actually even let it go even more, like 10 maybe. And if you hit play as well, you can see you have some. And I feel this looks a little bit interesting to me. So we can actually let me first of all reduce this one to like 4, right? Or maybe 5. And because it's parametric, you can select it and type in POP, and everything still works. And if we hit play and see our pop text, and the edges are staying, right? Can go in and probably increase the edges to 5. And you can see we increase our mesh density, so I select the remesher and increase it to probably 6,000 because we can. And now we have this interesting looking text effect, so you can go ahead and play around with it to get some nice inflating text. And you can use a lot of things in the vertex map. So I can actually delete the spline. I can add something like a random field, right? And I'll actually make it a bit big. And if we hit play and see, it's randomly inflating different places of our text, right? So you can use it to do a lot of interesting stuff. I think this was useful. I hope you liked it or you learned a thing or two from it. This was just a simple question, but I decided to do go in depth and add some interesting stuff to it to make it a little bit interesting. Now let's go into the second video that was asked, and that's this video. I mean this particular one. So let's go in and create this particular effect, right? So let me go ahead and hide it and create a new scene. I'll go ahead and create my text. So I'll create my text object in here, and I'll type in the letter C, capital C. I'll change the font to something like this one, Roboto, and I'll make it bold, and I'll middle align it as well. So I'll choose middle in the align, and then everything is fine. So what's happening in this particular video is that it's morphing from one state, the regular state, right, to the inflated state. That's basically it. So you need two states, the state which it is right now, and we inflate it so that we morph between those two. That's all we are going to do. So we can select the text, come to the grid and add those regular grid to get its inner segment. Let me change the display. You can see we have inner segment and all of that, but I prefer to use the remesh. So I'll come into my object and I'll choose the remesh. I'll make the text a child of the remesh, and I can see you have enough segments in there. I can, instead of polygon mesh density, I'll change it to polygon count, and now you have a lot of polygons. I actually increase it a bit more to like 3,000, right? So now we have this state. So what I can do is that I can right click on it, simulation tags, and I'll add my cloth tag to it. And then in the cloth tag, you can see in the balloon tab, we can enable balloon pressure. We increase the pressure to like say 2. And before I hit play, let me type Control D. If you go to the project settings, you can come also edit project settings, which is Control D. And now you can see we have gravity in the scene. So if I hit play, our text will fall. So I'll set the gravity to 0. And now if I hit play, our text inflates and it doesn't fall. But I don't like the way it's opening. I want it to stay where it is, right? So to do that, I'll use the remesh. I'll create a second copy of the remesh. Not necessarily, I can even use this one, but let's use the remesh, a second copy. And I'll delete the tag, and I'll right click on it again, simulation, and I'll add a collider tag rather. So this one is a collider tag. So let's go ahead and hide it. And now if we hit play, you can see our text inflates, but it stays there because it's colliding with this particular one. so that it doesn't get a chance to move away. So this is what I want, right? So everything stays the same. Now all we have to do is select this particular remesh and come to object, current state to object. So I hit current state to object, and now you can see it's created a new copy down here for us. So we selected the balloon remesh and created a new copy. So we can now go ahead and disable this. We don't need it, right? And now we have this state already. So if I go back, this one doesn't have any cloth or anything. So we have this particular state, and the other state that we want is the one without any inflation, right? So let me bring it back, and you can see we have this one here. Let me hide this one as well. So you can see we have this particular state, right? We want this state as well. So I can also select this one, right click and say or come to current state to object here as well. So we have two. So this is the state we, so you can go ahead and hide all of these ones, can delete these two nulls, right? And now we have these two states. So this is the inflated state and this is the regular state. So let me go ahead and call this one inflate, and I'll call this one normal state. So this all that we need to create these two effects, right? So I'll go ahead and hide the inflate state and now bring the normal state. So we are now going to use the morph tag. So if I right click on the normal one, come to rigging, you can add a post morph to it, right? And you select the post morph tag, come to points, and you can see we have base post. So the base post is the normal post, right? And post 0 is the post that we want to use, right? We can simply drag and drop the inflate to the target, or we can simply delete the post 0 morph and now drag and drop the inflate in here. We will choose no, right? And you can see it's created a new morph post for us, and that's the inflated state. So now if I come down to the strength, you can see it morphs from its regular state to the inflated state, right? So that's basically how we will do that. Now how do we get it to grow sequentially or take time to grow like the way it is in the video? And that we are going to use the post morph tag. So I'll select, see now it's set to edit mode, so you can change it to an animate mode. And this is where, if you want to animate, this is where you should make it in animate mode before you can animate it, right? So with the normal selected, this one selected, I can come into my deformers, and down here we have our morph deformer, right? I'll make it a child of our text, the normal particular geometry, and I can see we have it in our morph deformer. Now with the morph deformer, we can use fields to control our morph, right? So you can come into fields, and I'm going to use radial field. I'll change the axis to -z, z I mean, and come to the front view and align it somewhere here, which I think is fine, right? Let's go back into our perspective view, and I'll select the radial. So if I now come to the start angle, you can see what's happening, right? This is our start angle. So I'll set my start angle to, like, say somewhere here, right? And I can actually select it, come to radius and rotate it, and see, right? So this is how we will use it to bring it in. So now let's go ahead and set our keyframe. So first of all, I don't want it to affect the tip here, so I can actually come into our in the fields. Actually, let me increase it a bit, add a little bit of smoothness to it, and I'll do the same thing here. or I'll leave this one as it is though, but then I'll increase this one a little bit more, and I'll add a bit of transition to this one as well. So now let's go select our radial field, come to the coordinates, and now you can rotate it, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go at frame, maybe at frame 5. We set a keyframe here, and it goes forward to maybe frame 60, and it goes 360, right? It goes till it comes to this point, and now you set a keyframe, right? So let's first of all disable all these ones, and now if you hit play, everything looks clean, right? And after it's gotten here, let's increase our frames. After it's gotten to this point, we go ahead and add select our radial field, come to the field, and now the start angle, we reduce it back to 0, so it starts from here, it goes around, and make it stay for like at frame 90, and now we set a keyframe, come to maybe frame 140, and it set it from like frame 320 back to frame 2 angle 0. So if you hit play here and see, it goes round, and now it draws the whole thing basically. So that's how you do something like that. So to give it that cloth effect or that jiggle effect, we need the jiggle deformer. So I'll simply come into my deformers, and I'll add the jiggle deformer. I'll make it a child of the normal object, but then it should come after the morph. So the morph first, and then the jiggle deformer. And now if we hit play, it gives us this particular feel, right? Can go ahead, jiggle, and go ahead and jiggle. And now we can make it morph back, so you can select the morph in the morph deformer, come to the target, and now you can set it back to 0, right? So let's first of all disable the jiggle. Also, the jiggle wouldn't make it work. So after it's gotten, start from here, I'm here, and now come again here. After this place, let's say at frame 160, we set a keyframe, and at frame 180, we set it back to 0, so that it looks like it's looping, right? So I'll set like 200 frames, and now let's enable our jiggle deformer and hit play. In fact, in the jiggle deformer, we can actually increase the stiffness and stuff. So I can increase the stiffness like 60, right? And now if we hit play, everything comes on. So that's how you create something like that, and I think it's quite simple to do something like this in Cinema 4D. After everything is done, you can actually go ahead and add, let's see, you can go ahead and add a little bit of bevel deformer to give it a little bit of bevel here. Let's see if that works. I don't think it works. Let's delete that bevel. And now you can actually add subdivision surface, like with the normal selector, I can add a subdivision surface rather. Yeah, and I think that works perfectly. So change the display to shading, and you have our inflating text and deflating text. I hope this was useful and you've learned something from it. This is something I just sort of did off the top, like it wasn't something it's something I knew I could do, so I just did it on the fly. So hope you learned something from it, and couple of tips or anything. If there's any question or something you didn't understand, you can simply ask in in the comment section, or you can send me an Instagram DM, and I'll actually probably reply to it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.